Sarah was there, right in the middle of the crowded hall full of fancy people, with lights that looked more like stage spotlights, illuminating every detail, and the scent of expensive perfume in the air. All she wanted was for her work to be recognized, for the arrogant millionaire to see her for what she really was. But the moment he opened his mouth, everything collapsed. He laughed loudly, pointing his finger at her, and the humiliation cut through the room like a blade. His laughter echoed around, and Sarah felt every eye weighing down on her. It was that mix of shame, anger, and disbelief, and all she could think was, how could he be so cruel? But deep down, a spark of something new began to ignite. She tried to stay composed, but her voice trembled. Every word he said felt like fire, and each laugh tightened the knot in her throat. Sarah shrank into her simple dress, feeling the stark difference between her and all those confident people so used to applause and power. She realized this wasn't just a bad moment. It was proof that she had been underestimated, ignored. The humiliation was public, cruel, and every detail seemed determined to hammer into her mind that she didn't belong in that world. Still, Sarah took a deep breath, trying not to break completely. The millionaire went on, flashing his arrogant smile and looking at every guest as if to say, "You see who's in charge here." Sarah felt her face burn, but she also noticed something curious. A few people were exchanging glances, maybe surprised, maybe slightly uncomfortable. Not that she saw support yet, but it was as if the room itself was starting to notice the absurdity of what he was doing. And in that moment, Sarah decided that this wouldn't define who she was. When he finally turned to another topic, Sarah felt her legs wobble and her heart race. Every step toward the exit seemed like a challenge. Every breath carried a bit of shame, but also a silent determination she didn't even know she had. She left the hall, trying not to cry, trying not to shout, trying only to convince herself that she could turn the game around. The trail of eyes still on her only sharpened the bitter taste of the moment, but inside, something had started to move. In the taxi on the way home, Sarah couldn't stop replaying every detail, every laugh, every gesture of contempt. The pain was still intense, but the indignation began to grow like a flame that couldn't be extinguished. "He's going to regret this," she whispered to herself, not even sure if she meant revenge or proving her worth. The city passed by, blurred outside the window, but the image of the hall and his arrogant stare remained crystal clear in her mind, engraved in a way that wouldn't fade. Arriving home, Sarah looked at herself in the mirror and, for a moment, barely recognized herself. The simple dress, the messy hair, the exhausted expression, nothing matched the strength rising from within her. She ran a hand over her face, took a deep breath, and let the anger and sadness mix into a silent determination. It was as if every tear had planted a seed. That seed would grow, and she would bloom where no one expected. She sat on the sofa, hugging her knees, and for the first time allowed herself to think of possibilities. What if I could show him he was completely wrong? The thought brought a flutter to her stomach, a mix of excitement and fear. Sarah realized that, despite everything, she still had control over something, her own story. The humiliation had been public, but the comeback, well, that was entirely hers. In the quiet of the night, while the city outside remained indifferent, Sarah made a silent promise to herself. She didn't know yet how, but she would come back, stronger, more elegant, more powerful, and she wouldn't need anything but her own determination to surprise everyone. What she didn't yet know was that each step of her transformation would come faster and more intense than anyone could imagine. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a mix of emotional hangover and determination burning inside her. Her face still bore the marks of the previous night's humiliation, and every memory made her stomach twist. She tried to distract herself with her routine, but every fake smile in the mirror, every good morning swallowed at work, only fueled the growing anger. It wasn't just shame. It was the feeling of being undervalued, diminished, ignored, and at the same time, a tiny spark of strength began to rise. I won't let this define me. Walking down the street, she felt glances, even though no one was laughing at her anymore. The world seemed normal to everyone else, but Sarah felt as if she had been thrown off stage, left outside without applause or recognition. Every step was heavy, but carried a quiet curiosity. What could she do to turn this around? The anger mingled with a deep sadness, yet there was also the sense that something new was awakening within her, something she had never explored. She kept replaying every detail from the previous night. The loud laughter, the pointing finger, the amused guests. And no matter how hard she tried to push it away, the memory came in waves, bringing clarity too. He underestimated not just her, but her inner strength. The humiliation left marks, yes, but it also illuminated the path forward. Sarah felt a spark of pride. Maybe I can prove he's completely wrong. At home, staring out the window at the city lights, it all felt provocative. Every blinking light seemed like a reminder of what she could achieve if she turned her anger into action. The sadness pressed in, yes, but so did the thrill of knowing she was about to take a major step. It was fear mixed with excitement, a combination that made her heart race, almost as if it anticipated victory. Sarah started talking to herself, muttering ideas and plans she wasn't sure were even possible. Each word was a breath of resistance, each thought a brick in the construction of her revenge. The pain of the past blended with the desire for the future. Every memory of humiliation became fuel. She realized she needed to turn it all, anger, shame, sadness, into strength, intelligence, and strategy. Minute by minute, her certainty that she couldn't stay still grew. She breathed deeply, remembering his gaze, his laughter, his contempt. This could have been just one bad night, but Sarah knew it could become an entire story of overcoming. It was as if the humiliation had awakened her. Now it was time to act, to take control of her own narrative and show that no one could define her worth. Later, alone in her room, Sarah let a few tears slip. They weren't tears of weakness, but of release. She allowed the emotion to flow, felt the pain, felt the weight, but also realized that each tear planted something inside her, courage. A courage that didn't depend on applause or anyone's recognition, but on believing in herself. Before falling asleep, she made a silent vow. She wouldn't be the same. Every step, every decision, every thought from now on would be about growing, strengthening, and surprising. The anger of the past would become motivation, the sadness would become energy, and each step would prove, first to herself, that she could be powerful. And that night, for the first time since the humiliation, she slept with a quiet smile, ready to face every challenge ahead. Sarah sat in the armchair by the window, watching the city outside, and finally let her tears dry. She took a deep breath and thought, enough of letting myself be diminished. Every memory of the millionaire's humiliation mixed with anger and determination. She knew she could continue to suffer, or she could flip the script. The choice was hers. And in that moment, with her heart still racing, she decided she was going to change everything. She wouldn't be a victim anymore. She wouldn't be underestimated. She grabbed an old notebook and started writing ideas, plans, forgotten dreams and goals that once seemed impossible. Every word on paper released the weight from her chest and transformed it into energy. She sketched a version of herself that was different, confident, powerful, admired. It was like seeing herself from the outside, a Sarah who didn't exist yet, but that she could create. The feeling of control hit her suddenly and sent a thrilling shiver down her spine. The decision wasn't just about appearance, it was about inner strength. Sarah knew she needed to learn, invest in herself, improve, and surround herself with the right people. She could no longer rely on luck or charm. It was time for strategy, study, and discipline. For the first time, she felt capable of shaping her own destiny, and it made her smile to herself, a little incredulous, but fully determined. She looked into the mirror and whispered softly, "It's not just about showing him, it's about showing myself that I can." The reflection showed someone wounded, yes, but also someone about to awaken to her own power. Every practice of confidence in front of the mirror felt real, like she was training not just her appearance, but her soul. Sarah realized that the first step to change was believing she could, even before any external results. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends, and she replied calmly, but differently, firm, direct, unafraid to assert herself. Even small daily actions became part of the transformation. She understood that change wasn't just a grand gesture, but each decision, posture, and choice of words. Everything mattered in rebuilding not just her image, but her self-esteem. During the week, Sarah started researching courses, networking, and ways to enter spaces that once seemed out of reach. Every discovery fueled the flame inside her. It was a mix of excitement and anxiety, as if each step was already building the path back to her own power. And the more she planned, the more she felt that change wasn't optional. It was inevitable. She also began caring for her appearance, but not only for vanity. It was reinforcement of the confidence she was building inside. Small details, posture, clothing, hair, makeup, were constant reminders that she was transforming. Every adjustment, every care was a silent reminder that the old Sarah was left behind, and what emerged was someone no one could underestimate. By the end of the week, sitting with her open notebook, Sarah made one final commitment to herself. She wouldn't just return, she would transform completely. The anger of the past would become motivation, the sadness would become energy, and every step would prove, first to herself, that she could be powerful. That night, for the first time, she slept with a sense of quiet confidence, ready for every challenge that lay ahead. Sarah started seeking knowledge as if every hour was a golden opportunity. Books, online courses, videos, anything that could teach her to become smarter, more strategic and confident. She wrote notes, reviewed them, asked questions, tested ideas, as if building an invisible armor. Every lesson was a brick in the foundation of the new future she was creating. The feeling of evolving made her heart race, almost as if she was already tasting victory. She also began visiting places that once seemed out of reach: fancy cafes, networking events, social gatherings of influential people. At first, she felt the nervousness of someone out of place, but she quickly realized she could learn just by observing. Every conversation, every gesture, every glance was a lesson in how to behave, how to express herself, and how to be noticed without begging for attention. Sarah absorbed it all, turning insecurity into curiosity and action. Daily practice of new skills became routine. Sarah trained her speech, posture, negotiation, and people reading, as if rehearsing for the role of her new life. With every attempt, mistakes became part of the process, and she learned to laugh at missteps, turning failure into growth. The sensation of progress was addictive, and she found herself imagining the day when all this would be visible to those who had underestimated her. While studying and improving herself, Sarah also cultivated strategic contacts. Short, polite conversations, messages sent with care, but always intelligent. She realized that learning alone wasn't enough. She needed the right people around her to open doors and create opportunities. Every friendship or connection she made was a piece of the puzzle, and her smile widened every time she understood how much she was building. It didn't take long for small results to appear. Unexpected invitations, discreet compliments, opportunities that would have been impossible before. Each tiny victory fueled Sarah's confidence and showed that all the effort was paying off. She felt the world starting to notice a different presence, stronger, more confident. even if no one knew exactly what was coming. In the mirror, Sarah saw the transformation in her posture and her gaze. Her face still carried traces of past pain, but now her eyes reflected someone who had learned to assert herself without shouting. Her confidence grew each day, and it showed in her walk, her speech, her smile. Even the way she gestured carried a new authority, as if each movement told a story of overcoming. The intense routine of learning was shaping not just her mind and body, but her spirit. Sarah felt proud of every silent achievement, every step that no one else saw, and it made her stronger. Each night ended with the sense that she was one step closer to her revenge, and each morning began with the certainty that she could not stop now. After a few months, Sarah looked at herself and realized she was no longer the same. Fear and insecurity had faded, replaced by strength and strategy. She was ready to take the next step, the one that would finally show the arrogant millionaire and everyone who had doubted her that the old Sarah was gone and the new Sarah was about to shine. The first victories started small, almost unnoticed, but each one made Sarah feel unstoppable. An unexpected compliment at work, a call from someone influential wanting to talk, an invitation to an event she once thought unreachable. Every detail fueled her confidence. She began to notice that her efforts were paying off and that the world, even without fully realizing it, was starting to take notice. At breakfast, she counted her small achievements like trophies. A message thanking her for unexpected help, an idea approved in a meeting, a discreet smile of recognition from someone who once ignored her. Each tiny victory showed that Sarah was not just growing, but starting to earn respect. The sense of power was addictive, making her heartbeat faster with anticipation. She also started receiving invitations to sophisticated places, networking events, and social gatherings that had once been out of reach. Before, those doors had always seemed closed, but now they opened easily. Sarah walked into these spaces with confidence, observing everyone, learning even more about the world she had once thought distant. And every curious or admiring glance reinforced that she was becoming someone impossible to ignore. Messages from old acquaintances began to change tone. Those who had underestimated her now sent subtle compliments or sought her opinion. Sarah realized her reputation was quietly transforming. She didn't need applause or grand victories yet. The small successes already indicated that the path she had chosen was working. Meanwhile, the arrogant millionaire continued as if nothing had changed, but Sarah could already feel the difference in the atmosphere, the glances, the conversations. She smiled inwardly, knowing that even without returning yet, she was already beginning to make an impact on him. The anticipation was delicious, a mix of anxiety and pleasure, as if the revenge had already begun invisibly. Sarah realized that strength didn't come from appearance alone, but from every smart decision she made, every well-chosen contact, every strategic choice. She felt that she was building a solid foundation, a reputation no one could shake. And this awareness only increased her confidence, turning every small success into fuel for the next phase of her transformation. At home, looking in the mirror, Sarah noticed the difference not only in her eyes, but in her posture, her way of moving, her way of speaking and smiling. Every detail reflected the inner change, and it gave her a quiet thrill, knowing she was building something no one could buy or copy. It was the feeling of real power, the kind that comes from inside. By the end of these first victories, Sarah sat on the sofa with a calm smile, but full of expectation. She knew there was still much to do, but she also knew that now no one could doubt who she was becoming. Every step carried meaning, and every small achievement was a warning that the big moment was coming. Sarah appeared in public for the first time after her transformation, and it was impossible not to notice her. Her hair, perfectly styled, caught the light in a way that drew attention effortlessly. The elegant dress seemed tailor-made, paired with shoes that made every step radiate confidence. But it wasn't just her appearance. Her posture, her smile, and the way she looked at people carried an aura of power that no one could ignore. Every movement seemed to say, "I've changed, and you will notice." In the first few minutes, Sarah felt all eyes on her. People who had once ignored her now tried to figure out who this confident, radiant woman was. She smiled slightly, saying nothing, letting her presence speak for itself. The thrill of control was new, addictive, as if every part of her body had learned to communicate strength. Deep inside, Sarah relished the contrast between the image she projected and what he probably imagined about her. Conversations began naturally. Sarah spoke with confidence, asked smart questions, laughed at the right moments, and exuded charm effortlessly. Those who had underestimated her now sought her opinion. Every word, every gesture was silent proof that she had reinvented herself completely. The transformation was not only aesthetic, it was a shift in presence, energy, and the way the world perceived her. In the parking lot, the Ferrari drew attention. The roar of the engine, the shine of its paint, and the scent of the new car elicited surprise and admiration. Sarah slid into the car as if it were an extension of herself, elegant, powerful, commanding, without needing to prove anything. Every detail was deliberate, every movement calculated, making it clear that the old Sarah was gone. Now, the world had to deal with this version of her, and no one could ignore it. At social events, the change became even more evident. She was greeted with respect, curious glances, and even those who had once ignored her now approached. Each silent acknowledgement confirmed that her effort had paid off. Sarah realized the power of presence. She didn't need to humiliate anyone or display superiority. Just existing commanded attention and respect. As she walked among people, Sarah noticed curious looks and restrained smiles. She felt pride in knowing her transformation was complete, not just externally, but internally. Her confidence shone in her eyes, and the way she spoke reflected intelligence and determination. Every movement became a natural dance of strength and elegance. She enjoyed the quiet control she now had over the environment. In the bathroom mirror of the event, Sarah caught her reflection and smiled slightly. It wasn't just about appearance. It was about feeling powerful from the inside out. Every step of her learning, every small success, every strategic choice had led to this moment. She felt genuine pride, without needing his or anyone else's approval. The sense of accomplishment was intense, as if every cell in her body vibrated with achievement. At the end of the day, sitting in the Ferrari, Sarah breathed deeply and realized how much she had changed. The woman who had walked into that hall months ago no longer existed. Power, elegance, and presence were now second nature. And the best part, she knew this was only the beginning. Her real comeback was yet to come, and when it did, no one, not even the arrogant millionaire, would ever forget who she had become. Sarah parked the Ferrari in front of the hall where she had been humiliated months ago. The engine's silence held the room at bay for a few seconds, long enough for curious glances to turn toward her. The shine of the car, her confident posture, and the impeccable dress drew everyone's attention. It was impossible not to notice the difference between the woman walking in now and the one who had walked out, humiliated. Every step seemed choreographed by destiny, every gesture radiating power and assurance. She crossed the hall calmly, as if she knew the effect she was causing. Contained smiles, whispers, and admiring glances followed her every movement. Sarah felt a quiet thrill knowing that everyone recognized her transformation without her needing to speak a word. Every detail of her hair, makeup, dress, and walk was in place, and the reactions confirmed that she had become impossible to ignore. The arrogant millionaire was there, talking to some guests. When he looked up and saw Sarah, his expression changed almost instantly. The arrogance gave way to shock, then a mix of disbelief and forced admiration. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Sarah smiled lightly, a smile that carried all the confidence and determination she had built over months. It was her first silent but powerful victory over him. She walked to the center of attention, greeting acquaintances with elegance, responding to compliments naturally, leaving everyone curious about her story. Her presence spoke louder than words. Every gesture, every movement showed she was no longer the underestimated person she once was. The whole hall seemed to sense the shift, and the energy changed from surprise to silent admiration. Sarah approached the millionaire with firm, deliberate steps, measuring the impact of each second. He didn't know where to look. The car's shine, the dress, her hair, or the confident gaze he had never seen before. She didn't need to shout her victory. It was implied in every detail of her body, in the firmness of her stride, in the subtlety of her smile. And he finally realized that underestimating her had been the biggest mistake of his life. While talking to other guests, Sarah noticed that everyone's attention was split between admiration for her and surprise at the millionaire. She had earned respect and curiosity at the same time. That feeling of power was undeniable, a result of months of dedication, learning, and transformation. Each detail silently told the story of overcoming and victory. At the end of the evening, Sarah left the hall with steady steps, full confidence, and a calm smile. She knew she had closed a chapter in her life, turning pain into learning, humiliation into motivation, and anger into accomplishment. The millionaire might have money, status, and influence, but she had something he never would: control over her own life and awareness of her worth. On the way home, sitting in the Ferrari, Sarah took a deep breath and smiled to herself. Every tear, every effort, and every night of planning had led to this moment. She felt the pleasure of a complete victory, moral, emotional, and personal. The world had seen her transformation, and she knew nothing could stop her. The old Sarah was gone, and the new Sarah didn't just shine, she became unforgettable to everyone who had underestimated her. The millionaire was still speechless, trying to process what he was seeing. The shock on his face said it all. The Sarah he had humiliated months ago no longer existed. Arrogance gave way to disbelief, mixed with jealousy and forced admiration. He wanted to say something, but every attempt felt useless in the face of the confidence she radiated. Sarah just smiled calmly, fully aware that she didn't need to humiliate, prove, or explain anything. The victory was already complete. While he struggled to regain composure, Sarah moved gracefully through the hall, greeting people, talking and laughing naturally. Every gesture showed that she had achieved something far greater than wealth or status. She had earned respect, power, and emotional independence. He finally realized that her true strength came from within, not from appearances or material possessions. The lesson was harsh, but he felt every second of her brilliance. He tried to start a conversation, to make a comment, anything to regain control, but Sarah remained serene. The game had turned. She now set the pace, and he had no space left for arrogance. Every word she spoke was measured, firm and elegant, reflecting intelligence and self-assurance. He could have all the money in the world, but at that moment it was clear that Sarah had something he never could: presence, respect, and control over her own destiny. People around began to notice the contrast. The arrogant millionaire, still powerful financially, but emotionally shaken in front of her. Sarah admired, confident, and in control. The energy in the room shifted completely. Every gesture of Sarah reinforced the silent lesson. Underestimating someone can be costly, and real strength cannot be measured in money. He tried to hide it, but every move of hers reminded him of the irreversible mistake he had made. The sense of helplessness in the face of her control made him uneasy. Sarah noticed his reaction and, without harsh words, smiled lightly, with that air of, "I don't need to prove anything to you or anyone." It was the perfect moral revenge. Silent, yet devastating. Sarah continued her evening naturally, exuding charm, intelligence, and elegance. The millionaire couldn't take his eyes off her, and everyone present felt the impact of her presence. She didn't need to flaunt wealth or status to dominate the environment, but the Ferrari and impeccable appearance were visible symbols of effort, transformation, and determination. The victory was complete, visible yet subtle at the same time. By the end of the night, Sarah left the place with steady steps, full confidence, and a calm smile. She knew she had closed a chapter of her life, turning pain into learning, humiliation into motivation, and anger into accomplishment. The millionaire could have money, status, and influence, but she had something he would never have: control over her own life and awareness of her value. On the drive home, sitting in the Ferrari, Sarah breathed deeply and smiled to herself. Every tear, every effort, every night of study had been worth it. She felt the pleasure of a complete victory, moral, emotional, and personal. The world had witnessed her transformation, and she knew nothing could stop her. The old Sarah had died, and the new Sarah didn't just shine. She became unforgettable to everyone who had doubted her,